Hello guys, welcome to the next session of implementing CRUD operations using Angular version 16. In the last session we discussed on how we can set up the Angular version 16 project on the machine, and alongside we seen that how we can configure the bootstrap and Angular material into the project, and then we designed one basic home screen that we are seeing right now on the screen. So in this session we are going to work on one simple form so that we can save the details into the database. So let me just quickly give you the demo. So we are going to create a form something similar to this. Inside the form we will be having some free text like employee name. So let me just put some employee name, and we will be having contact number, then we will be having the address, and then we will be having one drop down, so where we can choose the drop down, and we will be having radio button also, and then we will be having the checkbox also. So in this one form we are going to like cover almost all the input fields that we have. We are going to work on free text, then we are going to work on drop down, radio, and then we will be seeing how to use checkboxes also, and then we can click on the save button and the data will get saved into the database. So this is the form that we are going to design, and the save functionality that we are going to work on. We have already created all the APIs that we require, so you can find all the links into the description box if you want, and you can just enjoy this series. So let's see how we can um, create this particular form. So now the very first thing that we have to do is we have to create one new component where we are going to design a form. So for that, what we have to do, we have to go to the VS Code, and let me just open the terminal, and then let me just use ngc, and then let me just give the component name as a employee, something like this. And with the component I'm just going to like implement or create a service also, so that we can like use those services for our component. So let me just use ngcs employee, so it will create employee service for me. The next thing that we have to do, we have to configure a path for our newly created component. So in order to do this, we have to go to the app routing.module.ts file, and over here let me just add one new path, and let me just give the path as employee, and component will be employee component. So let me just use employee component, something like this. Now what I just want one click event on this image. So whenever I will click on this image, it will just take us to the simple CRUD operation forms, or maybe you can say that employee forms. So for that we have to go to the home.component.html, and on this very first image we have to add a router link is equals to, and then we have to give the path. In my case it is /employee, something like this. And let me just go to the Google Chrome, let me refresh it, and let's see. So yes, I just have to restart the application, so let me just use ngserve, and then once the application is started we can just go back and we can just refresh, and then let me just click. And now if you just see, whenever I'm just clicking on this, it is taking us to the employee component. But just one thing that I just noticed, whenever I am hovering on this image, I just want to change the cursor so that user will get to know that this particular image is clickable image. So that is the reason we have to add some styles. So for this, what we can do, we can just go to this style, we can just go to the image and we can just add style, and cursor equals to pointer, something like this. And now if you just see, yes, we are able to see change in the cursor. Now if I just click on this, it is taking us to the employee component. Now on this employee component we have to design our form. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you how we can design the form, and once we are done with the design, then we are just going to implement some other changes which are required to save those save the form details into the database. So for this, let me just show you. Let me just go to the employee component, and over here inside the employee.component.html, let me just first of all remove this, and let me just first of all add one division having class container. So container is nothing but a bootstrap class. and we have to create one new division having the class as a card. And as of now, let me just add some lorem ipsum dummy text into this so that we can see on the screen like how it looks like. So it will look like something like this. If you want, you can just add some padding also, because as of now, if you just see, the text is pretty much stick towards the borders of cards. So let me just add some padding. So let me just use p-5, and now it is looking quite good. And I just want some space from the top also, so we can add some margin which is empty, maybe empty -3 for not for a card. So let me just try to add it, and maybe let me just try to increase this. Now yes, it is looking perfectly fine. Now instead of this dummy text, we have to like replace these dummy text with the actual form fields. So if I just go to the Angular material site, then if I just go to the form field section, then over here you will find different form fields that Angular material provides. So I'm just going to use these outlined form field. If you just want, you can just choose some other form field also. So in order to see the code, I can just click on the view code, and over here we have to copy this second uh, form field uh, code. So let me just copy this code, and if I just go to the VS code, and if I just remove this lorem ipsum, and if I just try to paste this, let's see as of now how it looks. But as of now, we should get some errors. The reason is, in order to use this mat form field, we have to first of all import these. So if I just go to the API section, and you will find this particular line. So copy this particular line and just go back to your app module ts file, and inside the app module ts, just import the given module, and you have to copy the module name, and then you have to paste it inside the imports array, something like this. And now if you just see, the project is compiled successfully, and we are able to see some input text. But still we are not be able to see the proper output. The reason is we have to import one more module, which is nothing but mat input module. So we have to, like, you can maybe copy this line and you can just paste it, and you can just use mat input module, something like this. And this basically comes from @angular/material/input, something like this. And then we have to copy this mat input module, and we have to paste it inside the imports array, something like this. And now if you just see, we are able to like get the expected output on the screen. Now we are not able to get the icon. The reason is we have to again import the icon module also. So if I just go to the this site, and if I just go to the icon section, and if I just go to the API, we have to copy this line, and we have to paste it again, and again we have to copy the name of the module, and then we have to paste it inside the imports array. And now if you just see, we are getting the proper icon also. If you just want to change the icon, I will just show you how you can change this, and from where you will get the names. But as of now, what we have to do, we have to design a form where we want to like get some details, like some plain text form fields. Then we want a radio button, then we want a drop down, and then we want a checkbox also, and at the end we want some buttons also. So in order to get the details, let me just first of all take you to the postman, where we have some details. So yes, so meanwhile, if I just show you collections, and maybe let me just go to the CRUD app. Yes, now over here we have the different fields that we just want to check. So we have employee name, contact number, address, and alongside we have the employee ID also. So for this we need 4 free text input fields, and for gender we need radio button, for department we need a drop down, and for skills we need a checkbox. So first of all, let's take 4 free text fields. So let me just go to the employee component HTML, and over here let me just first of all format the document. And now what we can do, we can just copy this form field and we can just paste it for 4 times, because we want four different form fields. And now let me just save this. Now we have the 4 different form fields. The next thing that we want maybe a radio button or checkbox. So let's see. Yeah, so maybe we can just take a radio button, or maybe we can just take a drop down. So if I just go to the Angular material official site, then let me just search for select, and we have examples again. So over here we have different examples, but I just want, yes, so I just want some drop down something like this. So what I just want to do is I just want to click on view code, and then over here we can just copy this code and we can paste it inside our VS Code, something like this. Now let me just format this code again. As of now I'm just copy pasting the code. In a moment we are just going to change it according to our need. And again we got some issues. The reason is we have to import this. So if I just go to the API, then we have to copy this line and we have to paste it inside app module ts file. We have to copy the name and we have to paste it inside the imports array, something like this. And now again we are getting some errors on the console. Let's see what are those errors. Okay, so as of now we are getting the reason that we are getting the error is due to this particular property. So let me just remove this property and let me remove this disabled also, and now we should be able to use this. Yes, so now we are getting the options that we require over here. The next thing that we want is we want radio button. So if I just go back and if I just search for radio button, and if I just go to the examples, then we have the different examples over here. So what we can do, we can just use a basic radio buttons. Let me just copy the code again and let me just paste it. And over here let me just format this code. Again we have to import it. So if I just go to the API, copy this, and inside app.module.ts file we can paste it, and we can copy the module name and we can paste it inside the imports array, something like this. And now if you just see, we got the radio buttons. Before the radio buttons we want some label, so that user will get to know that which kind of radio button is this. So we will be looking for some label. So let me just add some label, maybe something like this. And maybe we can just do one thing, we can just take this inside one single division, something like this. And let me just format the code. Yes, now it is looking quite good. And lastly we want one checkbox selection, so that we can select the employees skills. So over here what we have to do, we have to search for checkbox, and then if I just go to the examples, then we have different checkbox over here. So let me just search for some proper checkbox. Maybe we can just go with the very first one, something like this. So let me just click on view code. So over here you might get some differences. Like over here they might have shown some different examples and you might have different requirements, but we can just copy paste the code and then we can just try to modify according to our uses. So we can just do that thing also. So now let me just do one thing. Let me just try to copy these section, and let me just try to paste it over here, something like this. And let me just format the code again. Again we have to go to the API and we have to copy this line and we have to paste it inside app module ts. We have to copy it and we have to like paste it inside the imports array. Now let me just save these changes, and now if I just come back and as of now, yes, we are getting the issues. So the reason is we have to remove this ng model, something like this. And now if you just see, we got the checkboxes also. Again, we need some label. So what we can do, we can just use one division. Inside the division, we can just use one label, and inside the label, we can just use skills as a text, something like this. And yes, now it is looking quite good. And let me just format the code. Now yes, it is looking perfectly fine. The only one thing that we left back is over here they have applied some classes. So maybe we can just go back to the code, and we can just try to see what are the different classes that they have applied. So there are two classes, example section and example margin. So if I just go to the CSS, then you should be able to get these example sections and example margin. Let me just copy this and let me just paste it inside the employee component CSS file. Let's see how it looks. So as of now, it is looking quite good. So we can either keep it as it is, or maybe if you want, you can just apply your own styles and you can just try to like modify according to your own use cases. Now we are almost done with the form. The only thing that we have left back is we have to we need two different buttons. And for that different buttons, what I'm just going to do, I'm just going to first of all go to the divider section, and we have to like go to the examples, and over here we can just maybe see that how the basic divider is used. So we can just use this mat divider so that we can get some section between the form and the buttons. That is the reason I'm just going to use some divider. We have to go to the employee component HTML, and after the last division, after the like checkbox division, we have to paste the mat divider. But in order to use it, we have to again import it. So let me just copy it, and let me just go back and let me just paste it, something like this. And let me just copy the name, and let me just paste this name also, something like this. Now yes, it looks quite good. The last thing that we have left back is with the button. So if I just go to the button section, we have different types of button. Whatever button you like, you can just use. I'm just going to use a raised button. So if I just click on view code again, so we have the two different kind of buttons. Raised button, maybe like we need two different kind of button, clear button and save button. So I'm just going to copy the two buttons and I'm just going to paste it. Maybe we can just take one division and we can just paste these buttons, something like this. And over here, let me just change the text to the clear for very first button, and for second button I'm just going to choose a text as save, something like this. Again, we have to import it, so we can just go to the API, we can just copy it, and we can just paste it, something like this. Now if I just show you, it is looking something like this. One thing that we can just do, we can just try to take this button at the center and we can try to add some gaps in between these two buttons, because if you just see like clear button and save button, they are both are like very close to each other. We need some gap in between them. So first of all, if I just go to the HTML, the class that I just want to apply for this button division is text center. So text center is nothing but a bootstrap class, and I just want some margin from top, so I will just assign empty -3. And for button, I just want to apply one class which is nothing but a m-2, and for similar class I just want to apply for very first button which is m-2, something like this. And now it is looking perfectly fine. So now we are done with the basic form design. Now this form design is exactly same as, because we have just copied and we have just pasted it, right? So it is like kind of a generic example, but we want to change these form fields and then input boxes, check boxes, radio buttons according to our need, right? So let's see how we can do those changes. So in order to do these, what I'm going to do, first of all, I'm just going to create one model class so that we'll get some idea. So for model, what we need these fields. So let's do one thing, let's copy these fields. And if you don't have those fields, maybe if you haven't used a Spring Boot and if you are just looking for Angular, you can just maybe I'll just show you how to do this. So what you can do, we can just go back, and over here inside the app we have to create one new file, and then the file name should be something like employee.model.ts. and over here what we have to do, we have to use export interface, and you have to give the name. In my case it is employee, and then over here we have to give the properties. So these are the properties that I just copied for my reference, so I'm just going to create those properties over here. So very first property that we need is first of all employee ID. So let me just use employee ID, and again if you just go back to the IntelliJ, and if I just try to show you employee class, the employee ID, like all the spellings that we are using, make sure that you are just using the same variable names in a front end and back end both. So the reason why I'm just forcing you to use same variable name is it will help you to avoid your additional efforts. So otherwise if you have different names, then we have to like write some additional code to map those fields. So I just want to put you in that trouble. That is the reason I'm just forcing you to use the same names at the front end and back end. So that is the reason I'm just using the employee ID, and the name, I mean the type should be the number. Then we need employee name, that should be the string. Then we need employee address, employee contact number, that should be a string again. Then address, again that should be a string. Then we need gender, again it should be the string value. Department should be the string value, and lastly skills, it is also string value, something like this. And now we can just remove these. The next thing that we have to do is we have to go to the employee component inside the employee.component.ts file, and we need one property over here. First of all, we have to generate a constructor. So let me just write the constructor something like this, and we need ng-on-init method also. So in order to do this, we have to use implements on init interface, and then we have to like use quick fix and implement ng-on-init method. We can just remove this throw new error code. Yes. Now at the top, what we have to do, we have to first of all use one employee type variable, something like this. Now over here we are getting the issues. Let's see what are those issues. So the issues that we are getting is because employee have some properties like employee ID, employee name, and Angular wants us to initialize those properties. So you can just click on quick fix, and you can just use maybe second option. Let's see what is the second option, or else we have to write the properties by own. Okay, so over here in order to do what we have to do, we have to use is equals to and then curly bracket, and then inside this curly bracket we have to initialize all those properties. Again let's see. Yes, now if you just add curly bracket, it will just give the option like add missing properties. We can just add those missing properties, something like this. Now what we have to do, we have to bind these properties with our form. So like we have every single form field, so we have to bind these properties with our form. So in order to do this, if I just go to the HTML, the very first thing that we have to do, we have to like take this form inside the form tag. So if I just show you, like we have to use form, we don't want action, and then we have to close this form tag after our button ends. So let me just end this after our button ends. Let me just format this. Yes. And after the form, what we want to use ng model. So very first property we have this property for employee ID. So let me just change this to the employee ID, something like this. Placeholder, we can just put it as an employee ID itself. Then if you just want, you can change the icon, but I just want to keep it same. I don't want to use the hint, so let me just remove this hint, something like this. And now if I just take you to the Chrome, let's see how it looks like. So as of now it is looking like this. The reason is we have removed some properties. So in order to fix this, what we can just do, we can just go to the employee component CSS file, and we can apply some styles for matte form field. So we have to like we can just copy this matte form field, and we can just paste it, and we can just use width is equals to 100%, something like this. And yes, it will be fixed like this. Now we are done for employee ID. The next thing that we have to do is we have to like use two-way binding. So in order to use two-way binding, we have to use ng model. So how to use? So for ng model, first of all, what we have to do, we have to use a name is equals to, and then we can go to the employee model. We can just copy this employee ID and we can just paste it, and then we have to use ng model. And in order to use two-way binding, we have to use this banana in the box, something like this. And for this, what we have to do, we have to go to the employee.component.ts. So now if you just try to see, we have our employee property, and from this employee property we want to bind employee ID. So how we want to bind it, we have to use employee.employee ID. So we have to go to the HTML employee.employee ID, something like this. Now we must be getting some errors. Let's see what are those. So now if you just see, like we cannot assign this ng model. The reason is we have to like import some forms module. That is the reason we are not able to use this ng model. So in order to use, we can just go to the app module ts, and over here what we can just do, we can just try to import forms module. So let's see, forms module, something like this. And now if I just show you, yes, now we got the 0 value over here. So now from where this 0 value is coming? So it is coming from our line number 12. So it is coming from this. If you just change this value, you should be able to see it on the forms as it is, right? Yes, but let me just try to keep it 0 only, or maybe we can just keep it as a 1, and we can just assign some random values to other properties also, so that we will get to know that whether our values are binded successfully or not. Let me just apply some random number. Address is like Mumbai, gender is M, department is nothing but let's suppose IT, and skills is nothing but let's suppose Java, something like this. And now if I just go to the HTML again, the second property, second field that we want to bind is for employee name. So we have to just type employee name. Placeholder will be the employee name again. And then for icon, what we have to do, we have to go to this link. I'll just show you, I'll just give this link into a description box. You can just check that out. And over here you can just search for any icon. So I will search for user, so person, I will just choose this. And over here what we have to do, we have to come at the end and we have to copy the name of this icon. So let me just show you where we will get the name. Okay, So we have to go to this. Yes, maybe we can just copy the name as it is from Android again, or maybe let me just try to copy this and let me just try to paste it. Let's see. Yes, it looks quite good. We are able to see use this person name. So maybe you can just use this name as it is, and maybe you can copy it from here, but make sure that you are using it in a small case only, like this. And the next thing that we can just do, we can just use again name, and we can just go to the employee model. We can just copy this employee name for name property, and then we have to use ng model. So again, for the ng model, we have to give banana in the box employee dot, and this time we have to use employee name, something like this, and we should be able to see the employee name. Yes, similarly we have to use it for address, contact number, address and gender. So let me just use it for a contact number also. So let me just use contact number. Then for placeholder, I'll just place it as a contact number itself. For icon, I will be looking for icon, maybe let's suppose call. Yes, we can use this call. We can just copy the name and we can paste it, but make sure we are looking it for small case. And again, we have to use ng model. So what we can do, we can just copy this name and ng model, we can paste it. For name, I'm just going to use employee contact number, and for ng model we have to use employee dot employee contact number, something like this. Similarly, we need address, so let's go for next field, address. Then we need placeholder, let me just copy and paste it. And again, we need name and ng model, so let me just copy it, let me just paste it. For name, I have to use employee address, and for ng model I have to use employee dot employee address, something like this. Icon, you can just change the icon maybe to the home, so I will use this apartment, something like this. Let me just save it. Let's see how it looking like. Yes, it is looking perfectly fine. I just want to remove the hint, so let me just remove the hint because it is not looking quite good. And let me remove the hint for person field also. Now it is looking perfectly fine. Now we have this drop down option for department. So let's see how to choose. We can just go back and then we have to go for choose your department, and for option 1 I'm just going to use maybe IT, then network. So one thing that I just want to highlight is, as of now I'm just going to hard code all the values that we are using over here, like radio button, checkbox and these drop down values. But maybe at the end of this session I will just show you how you can replace these hard coded values with the like some API calls or maybe some database values. As of now I just don't want to create it like I just don't want to spend some time to like perform database actions because it is specifically Angular session, but I will be definitely showing how you can replace this hard coded value with the database values and how you can like make it a dynamic, so don't need to worry about it. And then let me just add one more department, which is nothing but a finance, something like this. Or maybe what we can just do, maybe we can just keep it with the repair, something like this. For value we can just keep it as IT, then network, then repair, something like this. Let's see how it looks. So yes, it is looking perfectly fine. For gender, we have to give the values as M and F, and value will be like M and F again. And for skills, we want different skills. So I just wanted Java and maybe let's suppose Angular. We can just add some more skills. Let's suppose Spring Boot. So as of now, I'm just again keeping it hard coded only, and we can add one more, which is nothing but AWS, for example. So let me just add AWS, something like this, and yes, it is looking perfectly fine. Now we are done with the basic changes for our employee forms according to our need. The next thing that we want these details to be entered by the user, and whenever user will enter these details, we want to click on the save button, and whenever we will click on the save button, we should be able to see the details which are entered over here inside our database. So again, for this, what we have to do, we have to first of all remove these values that we have just hard coded. So if I just go back to the employee component ts, I'll just keep those default values and I will just remove these, so that let me remove it and let me just remove this Java also, and yes, it is now fresh form. Now this employee id form, this employee id field is basically kind of disabled field. The reason is employee id will be generated automatically and we don't have to enter the employee id. That is the reason I just want to disable it. So let me just go back and let me just go to the HTML file and let me just use one property that is called as a disabled, something like this, and yes, now it is disabled. One more field that we just need is we need it for a skills, like whatever skills you are going to choose. Maybe if you just want, you can just add one more field over here and maybe you will be able to get like what are the different skills that are chosen. So what I just want one more field. So if I just go back to the HTML and if I just copy this maybe address field, and if I come back to the skills, before the skills checkbox, we can just put this and we can just make it as, let's suppose, employee skills, and then we can just choose the placeholder to the employee skills. Name will be employee skills and ng model will be like employee skills, something like this. And for this up, we can just choose different icon. Maybe let's suppose we can just choose book, and we can just use this menu underscore book, like this. And yes, now it will be looking something like this. Again, this employee skills will be the disabled field. The reason is whatever we will select over here, just those values we will show in the employee skills automatically. That is the reason we want to disable this particular field. So in order to disable, we have to again come back and we have to just write disabled, something like this. Now it is looking perfectly fine. If you just want, you can just put some gap in gender and employee skills. So for that, I will be using some class mt dash maybe 3. Let's see, maybe we can make it as 2. Yes, now it is looking perfectly fine. Now we are done with this. Next thing that we want to do is we want to use this save button, and we want to save whatever details we have used. We want to save those details, but before that, we want one more thing is we want to work our radio button and our checkboxes also, so that whatever value user is using or choosing, we want to store those values, right? So that is the reason we have to add some additional click events. So for this, first of all, what we have to do, we have to add one click event on our radio button. So in order to do this, we can just go to the radio button and we can just add one click event, click, and as this is event, we have to mind it into the brackets, and we can just use gender, or maybe we can just make it as a select gender, and we can just add some parameters like for male we can just add value as M, and for female we can just add the value as a F. So we can just add value as a F, something like this. This function is not yet created, so what we can do, we can just go to the employee component and we can just add this function. So let me just add maybe gender, because we need one parameter, right? So we have to add it, and it will return void. And over here what we have to do, we have to just use this dot employee gender is equals to the gender that we are receiving as a parameter, something like this. Now we need similar thing for our checkboxes. So in order to do this, what we have to do, we have to go to the checkboxes section. So over here we have to go to the checkbox. Yes, and inside the checkbox what we have to do, we have to add some additional events. So the angular material itself provides some additional events. So for this we have to use change event. So how we have to use, we have to like use change, and as this is event we have to use it in the brackets is equals to, and then what we have to do, we have to like on skills, you can just give any name for a method on skills changed or changes, and then we have to pass one event as a parameter. So in order to pass the event we have to use $event, and then similarly we have to copy this and we have to give it for our other values also, something like this. And then the next thing that we have to do, we have to create this method. So we can just go back and we can just inside the component ts file we can just create the method. We have to take the parameter of type of name event, something like this. Now we can just give the type as any as of now, and over here what we can do, we can just use console.log. I just want to show you something, that is the reason I'm just using console.log event, something like this. And now if I just try to inspect and if I just try to open the console and if I just try to show you, whenever I will click on this Java, then you will be able to get some console, something like this. And then if you just see, then we have very first property that is called as a checked, which is equals to true. And then we have one more object that is source. Inside the source you will be able to find one more thing. Maybe let me just try to find it out. We will be able to find some values. So let me just show you. Let me just try to make it quite bigger. So we should be having some values over here. So we have one value option, so in which we will be getting the value that we have, but as of now I am not be able to find this. Let's see if I just go back to the HTML and over here, yes, the reason I'm not able to find it because we have not given value attribute over here. So what we have to do, we have to use value is equals to then Java, and similarly we have to apply a value for all these, and we have to change value Angular for Angular, then Spring Boot for Spring Boot, and then we have to use AWS for AWS, something like this. And now let's try to do, let me just try to check the Java, then we will be getting it as a checked. Then inside the source, now if you just see, you will be getting it value is equals to Java, something like this. So in this way we can just access the value, and the very first property which is checked, we can just use this property to check whether our input box is, whether our checkbox is checked or unchecked. So that is the reason we can just use it. So if you just uncheck it, you should be able to get checked is equals to false, something like this. Now what we can do, we can just go back into our employee.component.ts. On skills changed, what we can just do, we can just use, first of all, check if event dot checked is equals to true, or else we can just keep it as it is because checked is boolean value itself. If it is checked, then what we can do, we can just create one new array over here. So the reason why I'm just creating array, I'll just tell you in a moment, but as of now you can just create one array skills which is of type string array is equals to, and I will initialize it with the empty string. And what we can do, we can just use this dot skills dot push, and what we can push, we can just push event dot source dot value, something like this. We can push it. If it is unchecked, then we have to remove it from skills array. So in order to remove, what we have to do, we have to like use this dot skills dot for each. So we can just use a for each, and inside the for each, what we have to write, we have to write one arrow function. So in order to do, what we can just do, we have to use item comma index. So if you must be knowing, like if you know Angular a little bit, you must be knowing how for each method basically works. So we have to use the curly brackets, and in this we have to just check if item is equals to event dot source dot value. If our value which we have unchecked matches with our skills array, then in that case I just want to remove it. So in that case I just have to use this dot skills dot splice, and we can just use index comma 1. So this is how the splice method basically works. If you like want, if you can just give this into a curly bracket also. The reason I haven't used a curly bracket is because after the if, we can give a single line without curly bracket. If we have multiple line, then we have to give the curly bracket, or else if we have only single line, we can avoid those curly bracket. That is the reason I have just avoided, but we can just give it also. Now let me just save these changes, and now if I just show you, if I just like check, we are not able to see anything inside the employee skills. But what we want, we just want to use this dot employee skills is equals to, we can just use this dot skills dot toString, something like this. And now if I just show you on the browser, if you just see whatever we are checking, we are able to get those values, and if you just uncheck, we are able to remove those values also. Now our checkbox is working perfectly fine. Now only thing that we have left back is our drop down. So in order to use a drop down, again it is really very simple. What we have to do, we have to just go to the HTML file, and if I just try to go for a drop down, so yes, over here we have the drop down. So for this drop down, what we have to do, we have to give a name is equals to, so what name I'm just going to do, I'm just going to use the name as employee department, something like this. Again we have to use a ng model, so let me just use ng model, and this time I just want to bind it with the employee dot employee department. So let me just try to bind it with the employee department, something like this. And now we are good to go ahead with the selection, that is drop down also. Now if I just show you, it is working as expected. We can just put some name also, we can just put some contact number also, and we can just put some address also. And now finally the only thing that we have left back is with our save button. So in order to save, what we have to do, we have to just go back to the HTML, and then we have to just go back to the forms, and inside the forms what we have to do, we have to just give one name to the form, and then we have to use ng submit. So let's see how to use the ng submit. So over here we have to write hash employee form, you can give any name, is equals to ng form, and then we have to give ng submit, and ng submit is nothing but an event, so we have to give it in a brackets, and then we have to use employee save employee, you can give any method name, and for this we have to just pass our employee form. So we have to pass employee form as a parameter, something like this. Now this save employee method is not yet present or not yet created, so we have to create it inside the employee.component.ts. so if I just go and if I just paste the code, and for the employee form we can give the name as maybe ng form, and it will return void, so you can just give it as a void. And now let me just save these changes. Now over here what we want to use one service which is our employee service, and we have to create like some service layer code. So in that case what we have to do, we have to go to the employee service. So if I just go to the employee service.ts file, and over here the very first thing that we have to do is we have to use http client. So we have to use http client, and in order to use the http client we have to include or import http client module. So if I just go to the app.module.ts, we have to import http client module. So let me just try to import http client module, something like this. And now we can just go back to the employee.service.ts file. Over here we have to create one new method which is public save employee, and this as of now what we have to do, we have to just use this dot http client dot post. The reason why I am using post is, if I just show you, we have the post API, and then we have to use this API that we have. So for this API what I'm just going to do, I'm just going to use one string variable. So let me just use API is equals to this string variable, because these till this 9090 the URL is common for all these APIs, so that is the reason I'm just going to keep it as it is. And after the 9090 we have to just cut this, and now what we have to do, we have to use post, and then we can just use backticks dollar, and then we have to give API, and after that we can just give slash, and we can just paste our API. So this is how the API will look like. And then we have to pass a body also, so we need one parameter of type employee. So that body we just want to pass it something like this, and again this will return us the observable of employee. So let me just give something like this, and we can just give the return type as observable of employee, something like this. And now over here we are getting some issues. Let's see. Okay, so it is saying like a function whose declared type is neither undefined, void nor any must return a value. So over here we have to just write return something like this. Now if I just come back to the employee.component.ts, the very first thing that we have to do, we have to use we have to inject the employee service. So we have to inject employee service something like this, and then inside my save employee method we have to just use this dot employee service dot save employee, and then we have to pass this dot employee, and then we have to subscribe it. Now if you are new to the Angular 16 and if you have used the older versions of Angular, then inside the like in the older versions of Angular, the subscribe syntax for the subscribe method is quite different, but in Angular 16 it is bit different. So what we have to do, we have to just give the curly brackets and then we have to just write next. So next is nothing but a callback for success function. So you can just use response, you will get the response of type employee, something like this. And maybe we can just give console.log res, something like this as of now. And then the next callback that we need is for error. So we have to give error, then colon, and then we have to give http error response, and maybe we can just try to use console.log err, something like this. And now let me just save these changes, and if everything is successful, then what I just want to reset the employee form. So I will just do employee form dot reset, something like this. And now let me just save these changes. First of all, let me just go back to the IntelliJ and let me just start the application, because as of now the application is not yet started. But before that, let me just go back to the MySQL, and over here let me first of all show you what are the different values that we have in the table. So as of now we have only 2 records in the table, so we are going to add some new records over here. So let's see whether our IntelliJ started or not. So yes, IntelliJ is started, and if I just go to the Google Chrome and if I just first of all refresh these, so let me just try to put some values. Let me just put some values as Raj, then contact number, maybe let me just put some different address, let me just put it as a Pune, then department, repair, mail, and for skills let me just use 2 different skills. And now let me just click on save. Let's see what happens. So as of now the form is not reset yet, we should be getting some error if I just go to the console. So yes, now we are getting error, which is nothing but a course policy issue. So for this, what we have to do, we have to go to the IntelliJ, and then we have to open a controller, and then over here on the controller we have to use @cross origin, and then we over here we have to just give it as a http :// localhost 4200, something like this, and we have to restart the application again, and this time it should work as expected. So let me just wait till the application is starting. Now the application is started. Let me just refresh it and let me just put some value again. For address, let me put Pune. For a department, let me just choose repair, mail, and then let me just choose some skills. And yes, now the form is reset. And if I just show you into the database, we are able to see those data, like we are able to see like address, contact number, every single thing that we have just used from our form. We are able to see those details. Okay, and if you just see, like we are able to reset all those fields, but we are not able to reset the gender and skills. So for this we have to just write few simple conditions. So first of all, for the gender, what we have to do, we have to just go to the HTML file, and then over here what we have to do, we have to just write checked, and this checked is like a value binding, so we have to bind it. And what we have to do, we have to just check like employee dot employee gender, employee dot employee gender. Let me just try to find out the spellings, because it should be exactly same. So employee dot employee gender is equals to M, and we have to give the similar condition for female also. So we have to give it as a F, something like this. And now let me just check if I just fill some details again, Raj, and I'm just putting some random details. Yes, so now if I just click on save, Then this time we're still not getting this as unchecked. Let's see what is happening. So over here what we have done checked is equals to employee dot uh, employee gender is equals to M, and over here what we have done, okay, so one thing that we have just left back is maybe what we have to do once we get the success response, then after that we just have to use this dot employee gender is equals to, and we have to just initialize it with the single quotes. Let's see what happens now. Now again let me just put some details and address. Yes, now this time the gender is resetting. Now we have left back with the skills. So for skills what we have to do, we have to write one small method. So how we are going to do is we have to just use again we have to just use checked binding, and then over here what we have to check, we have to call one method and check if whether Java is present inside our skills or not. So how we are going to do, we are just going to use check skill, and then we have to pass our value. In my case it is Java. So make sure like whatever value you have given over here, we are just passing it as it is, something like this. And we need it similar for our Angular. Let me just change the parameter. We need similar for a Spring Boot, and we need similar for AWS, but we have to just change the parameters, something like this. So let me just try to copy the Spring Boot and let me just paste this. Now this change skills method is not present, so let me just correct the spelling first. So the change skills method is not present yet, so we have to create this method inside our component ts file. So let me just go to the employee.component.ts file, and then let me just create, and this will take one skill as a parameter, and this skill is of type string. So what we have to do, we have to just return, and what we have to do, like we have to just return and check if this dot employee skill not equals to null, and this dot employee skill includes the skill for which I am checking, something like this. And now let me just save these changes, and if I just go back and let me just put some random details, and now yes, if you just see, we are able to reset our form as expected, and we are getting the values. And again if I just notice that we are still not able to reset the gender, so let's see what is the problem with the gender itself. So now we are able to uncheck the skills, but still our gender is not resetting. So maybe what we can just do, I'm not sure what is happening, but what we can just do, we can just create one similar method, and maybe we can just create one similar method check gender, and this will take gender as a parameter which will be of type string itself, and we will just write one similar condition, but we will just check this dot employee and employee gender should not be equals to null, and this dot employee gender should be equals to the gender that we have just passed. And this check gender method we have to call it from our HTML, but make sure that you are just passing the correct values, something like this. Let me just remove these quotes and let me just correct the value, something like this. And now let me just check, and if I just try to put some values again, as of now we don't have any validations, so that is the reason we can enter any values. So yes, and if I just show you, like, maybe put some address, network. Yes, now we are able to reset all these values successfully. So this is how we can create the form for storing the employee details. I know this was a very long session, but we can't do anything. This is the process that we have to follow, which is quite long process. So I just explained lot many things, and I just try my best to like explain every single thing. If you still have any questions, let me know into a comment section, and I will try my best to help you out in that case. I hope you enjoyed this session. I'll see you in the next session.